In 2023, the global water bottle market was valued at $318 billion. How did this idea come about? Like, whose genius idea was it to put water in a bottle and sell it to the masses? So, I wonder what the history, what brought it to the point we are today. What is purified water? What is distilled water? And how is it different from the tap water that we have? Like, I don't understand. There's like terms like osmosis, reverse osmosis. You'll see it on bottles. But what does that actually mean? With that being said, welcome to Beyond the Shelf, a podcast about how everyday products are made. My name is Amar.
My name is Tarek, and we are your hosts.
Today's episode, we're going to talk about bottled water. Specifically, I really want to know how Smartwater came to be. Like, Tarek, are you a bottled water fan, or do you take your little flask and refill water everywhere? Like, what kind of
I am a
human being are
Smartwater
you?
fan. I'm joking. I don't Smartwater. I would drink it a little bit if it's in the shelf. I'm mostly driven by whichever is the smallest bottle size and whichever is the cheapest. To be honest, in my head, it's like all waters, but they do taste different. I have
Yeah.
noticed some, like the Sani. I think tastes. I remember trying it a couple of times.
Dasani
It
tastes
tasted
off,
different.
man. I don't know if it's just me. Dasani, Aquafina, Dasani, they taste off. Nestle, what's the Nestle name? I forget. What
Is it
is
the
it?
Ice
Pure Life.
Mountain? Pure Life is
Pure
another
Life?
big one from Nestle.
Pure Life
Yeah.
tastes decent. And then Great Value, the Walmart one, you can taste it iffy, maybe more minerals. I'm not sure.
I don't think I've tried that one actually. But do you actually, if you're to guess how, like, what makes them taste differently? Any idea?
I really think I at least guess, it's the minerals and how well it's filtered and if there's any additions. I'm assuming there are additions. I don't know. I can only assume.
Yeah, it's actually quite spot on. So the minerals that they add to the water for every brand, they have a different sort of quote unquote recipe for what they
Yeah.
add for
Recipe.
minerals to the water to make it taste different. And if you notice, like a lot of brands, and you were talking about Smart Water, they call it crispy taste. Like, I don't understand what crispy water means. Like, it's not crunchy as far as I can tell, but it's crispy water.
Marketeers do anything and everything to get that sell.
That's
Holy.
their job. That's their job. It's insane the how far they're willing to stretch water. It's
Yeah.
Guys, it's water.
Yeah.
So
My number one question
yeah,
is, what genius said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna have this water, I'm gonna put it in a bottle, I'm gonna sell it to people, sell it to these suckers, and I'm gonna make money because this water is free, but I'm gonna sell it.
that idea actually started coming up around the 17th and 18th century, specifically in 1622. There was a little establishment. It's called Holy Water Bottling Company. Essentially, that's what they called themselves after. They had access to this spring water, and at the time, there was this perception that spring water and mineral water had its unique properties to heal wounds or to make people more relaxed, and it's perceived as something that is better than regular tap water. And people would
Where
eat.
was this?
This was in the UK.
Oh, the British?
Yeah.
I'm surprised the answer was an American. Figured everything we've
Well,
always talked about.
1622. This is before the U.S.
uh,
empire came about, if you will, right?
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. This is the colonial empire.
This is still the old world, the
So
UK.
not only did they conquer the world and make everyone do their bidding and take everyone's resources, they also took those resources, put it in a bottle, and then gave it back to them at a price.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what they did. And
Crazy.
the idea came from that perception, right? And even then, like, think about the idea that you can drink spring water of a spring that exists 10, 20,000 miles away from you. And that was part of the deal, that you're
Ah,
tapping into what people, especially well-off, wealthy people at the time, into what they perceive as something sophisticated or aristocratic or something bougie that they want to do, and selling them water that is perceived to be healthier and better from an exotic land in Zambia or something. That is a value proposition they're willing to pay dollars for.
So I'm
And that
assuming it was expensive at this time.
it was obviously more expensive. So in that specific example for the Holy Water Bottling Company, it was a local
Oh,
spring in the UK for the UK
huh.
people. It then started to spread throughout Europe as that perception started to grow of spring water benefits and properties
Oh,
and so
okay.
on. And then in the 1720s, 1730s, there was a spa it's called Jackson Spa in Massachusetts that actually essentially did the same thing. They had access to a spring, they had a spa, and they started selling the same water in a bottle format. Obviously, plastic
This
was
was
not
in
a thing
glass,
at the
right?
time.
Back in the day, this was in
This was
glass.
either clay or glass. Yes, it was not plastic. And
Clay.
yeah,
Ah.
like a vase. Think of like those old vases that you would make out of
Ah.
clay. Yeah.
Cool.
At the time, also, this whole idea kind of stayed with us all through the 1800s and 1900s, and it picked up very well in the 1970s when the idea of spas and self-care and like the hippies at the time started to kind of take take those ideas and kind of run with them. That's when you saw a huge explosion in the bottled water industry. It's around that time.
Huh.
It's just a lot of companies started to show up at the time. A lot of brands started to kind of pop in the map, and then it started to become the format that we're familiar with. Like right now, if you go to a 7-Eleven, there are like 10 brands of water that are next to each other, and they're taking almost half of the fridges that exist there.
So how like the first brand what was the first brand, and how did we get to kind of where we are? How did the landscape get to where we are?
As the industry kind of developed and the idea of bottled water became more mainstream, then you started to shift from this springs to something more local. So like Smartwater, for example, it
Yeah.
started from a specific spring in Connecticut, and that's where they would fill all their bottles and they would ship throughout North America. And then Coca-Cola bought them a few years later.
How did that happen? Like, I'm assuming it was a small company in Connecticut and they started. What did they do that was so drastic that, caught the eye of Coca-Cola? Like, what happened?
It was one of those more popular brands that existed at the time, and there were obviously not as many competitions. And when you think about a lot of those conglomerates that exist right now, like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nestle,
Yeah.
they can only grow so much as a standalone product. So some of
Right.
the ways that a lot of those big companies seek to grow and continue to grow their market share is through acquisitions. So they started entering from a soft drink into waters. So you'll see Nestle and Coca-Cola owning, and Pepsi, they own the vast majority of the water brands that you see in the store, just
That's
different
true.
bottle
I mean,
brands.
their number one raw material is water. So, I mean,
It's easily available. And when Coca-Cola, I believe they acquired Smartwater, it was probably like 2006, something along those days. They actually switched the company from using that unique spring into just municipality water, and they went through the process of distillation and vaporization, and then adding electrolytes.
and I know there was like, I don't know if it was in the US, but Nestle got in a lot of heat over their exact thing, the municipality water. I think they took over some land or they were accessing an aquifer or something, and then yeah, it was like almost free or nickel, like it was a dime to a dollar, and they were getting it for cheap, and they were bottling and selling it to people at whatever the price was. And
Actually, yeah, let me tell you that. So that's interesting because Nestle essentially is kind of got in trouble for that, but I mean, they're still doing that now. So essentially, if I recall the story correctly, they were getting the water. It was like river water that they're taking from one town in Michigan, small town in Michigan, and they're charging and they're giving the town maybe 13 cents, something like that, something very small per gallon. And then they take that water, put it in a truck, ship it to another town in Michigan where they process it. So that's where their factory is. They process it,
yeah.
they clean it, purify it, add the minerals to it, and then they ship it as ice mountain spring water. So that ice mountain spring water, it's essentially coming from Michigan, and their annual revenue, that town, from just selling the water to Michigan is like $300,000. So they're paying the town $300,000 a
Nothing.
year. And they're maintaining the well for that town. It's like maintaining a well. I don't think it's that expensive, so that's a pretty good deal that they have with them.
That's a great deal, man. I want that deal. How do I get that?
Obviously, locals are always pissed because you're taking their water, the land that they live, and they're selling
Yeah,
it across, making a lot of money on it.
I hear you. So I know there's so many brands, but I want to talk about like one of them specifically because I really am curious how the hell did they manage this. Smartwater, right? What I know they have a great marketing team and stuff like that, absorbed by Coca-Cola. They have a great distribution. But what is the claim to fame? Like, how are they getting people to get on the Smartwater bandwagon? What's making it so smart?
Again, crisp taste. Why are you not getting that more? It
Damn,
is
man, that
crispy,
explanation.
tasty water.
That's it.
So
That's the end of this episode. That was a great explanation.
it's crispy taste. You can't get crispy taste from the tap water. No, seriously though.
Yeah.
So if you go to their website, if you go to
Yeah.
Smartwater's website, they will show you their process in 3 easy steps. It is distillation, purification, and then electrolytes. It's essentially 3 process steps that they take their water through to make it as crispy as they claim. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, they now have cans. So now you can buy the same water in a can format because you now look cooler with that. In any case,
I've seen one in Tetra Pak. You know the like the
the
milk
box
carton
water,
boxed
box water,
man.
their marketing is easy. Box water is better. Like with smart water, you have that first stage as distillation stage, right? So
Okay.
essentially what distillation means is you're taking the water from the city, exactly the same as tap water, and then you're boiling it. And then you're condensing that vapor into another vessel or another tank. And that's
Okay.
essentially your purification step. So distillation is just boiling it, collecting that steam, and putting it in a different tank. The
Okay.
advantages of doing that is that you obviously kill all the germs and the bacteria in the water, and
Uh-huh.
you would remove any impurities that the water may have had because everything is turning into
Right.
vapor, and then you're collecting it on the other side.
This is similar to what, all our parents or like anyone in um I guess it's called third world countries, I guess. They're doing it, right? They get their water, they
Developing
boil
countries,
it.
please. This is an old terminology. Developing countries.
Di- Sorry, I retract that. Yes, developing countries, they'll boil it, they'll let it cool, put it in the I don't know, jug or something. So I get that. Okay, good.
And
I
even,
got it. Distilled.
but even like if you look at those survival videos, you know those videos on YouTube where people show you how they survive in the wilderness without anything?
Yeah,
That's one of the things that they do, right? They take water from the
boil
river and
water.
they just boil it and then let
Yeah.
it down and they just drink it. So
Okay.
so that's essentially distillation. You're just cooking it.
Okay.
The other process that smart water goes through, and this is honestly kind of redundant. You don't really need to do this because at that stage you've cleaned up your water pretty well. You don't need to do the second stage. They do purification. So purification is essentially another way of getting rid of any microbiological growth in your water or any impurities that it might have.
Okay.
And there are a slew of ways you can perform purification on water. You mentioned reverse osmosis. So this is one way you can purify water. Essentially, with reverse osmosis, you're essentially pushing your water through a very, very fine membrane or a set of
Okay.
membranes that allow you to remove any impurities and any minerals that are dissolved in your water. Other ways you can do something called UV. You essentially just blow UV light on it and that purifies it.
Okay.
Ozone. Ozone is another very popular way, and that's also used in things like manufacturing, or if you
Mm.
think of shampoos, they have a lot of water. Ozone is one way they can purify that water to make sure there's no bacteria in it. Ozone, you're essentially just blowing ions on your water, and that would kill all bacteria that would exist in it.
So you mentioned that Smart Water does distillation, which I guess everybody does this. And then you mentioned how they do the purification step with a thin membrane, and then which is essentially reverse osmosis. So what's the difference between reverse osmosis and osmosis?
you wouldn't see osmosis is essentially more of a biological natural process that exists in nature. It's essentially
Right.
just the process of absorbing water to, so think of plants when you have a dry plant or a plant that needs watering and you put water, that absorption process, that's essentially what osmosis is. So it's more like an absorption phase. Reverse osmosis, while they sound the same, is you're actively pressuring water to be pushed through a membrane in order to clean it from any impurities or things that are dissolved in it. Osmosis has nothing to do with water production or water bottles, more of a biological thing.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So, Smartwater, the manufacturer of Smartwater, do those methods. I'm assuming not everybody follows the same methods. And then the other one is I've heard is adding minerals to it or adding like vitamins to it, or making it more alkaline or alkaline water. What does all that mean? Like, what does that mean in terms of how do you do it and why do they do that?
So, yeah, so actually, that's what Smartwater have on their website as their third and final step, right? It's electrolyte additions. So that's where they add potassium, magnesium, and any other minerals that they have. And this is exactly what makes water brands taste differently. So if you like a specific brand versus the other, this is the reason. It is the type of minerals that they have, and it's the concentration of those minerals that they put in. The idea that I just want to kind of cover that because there's a little bit of misconception in that space is that smart water or any other brand is healthier than tap water. It depends where you live, right? Like if you're living in an area where your water supply is not clean and the
Yeah.
city is telling you this is not safe for drinking, that's a different story. But for a lot of the cities that exist, especially in like developing and developed countries, the city, for the most part, that is a clean and safe to drink water in perpetuity. So the idea or the claim that this water has minerals, therefore it is healthier, it's not really doesn't really work here because the amount of minerals these companies have in the water is very, very small that you can easily get those minerals from your diet, just eating normally and just drinking tap water. I mean, tap water has minerals too. It's not like stripped out of it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So the final thing, right? You UV, you ozone, you got your final water. You want to add electrolytes. What do they do? Just put that final water in a giant tank and add in, let's say, potassium, magnesium. Is that what it's doing? And then there's, do they heat it? Do they
No,
need to heat it, or
no,
is
no,
it
no need
ambient?
because it's already cooked, right? It's already not cooked, but it's already purified. It's already distilled. You just add those ingredients in the tank and you're ready to rock and roll. You just fill it and you have your final product. Now, I want
Gotcha.
to go back a little bit because you touched on something important that is alkaline water. Alkaline water, it's something that's been around for a long time. I've never
Okay.
had an alkaline water, so I don't know. Have you had
Mm,
one? Do you know
Me
taste?
neither. I've heard. I'm assuming it was part of some like laboratory like prerequisites that people needed as a raw material in some testing. I had no idea people drink this stuff.
So apparently they do, and I never had one, so I don't know if it tastes different or it tastes any like better or something like that. But alkaline water it's essentially water with higher pH. So if you talk
Okay.
about tap water or those bottled normal bottled water, the pH
Yeah.
is roughly around 7, and that's the
Yeah.
neutral
Neutral. Yeah.
space for water. So what's different about alkaline water is obviously it's more basic with a higher pH. So usually it goes around between 8 to 9. Smart water is at 9.5. The claim of fame for that brand, specifically for Smart water, because that's what their marketing is it's better hydration. It's marketed towards athletes, and it's supposed to help with muscle recovery and slow down bone loss. So there has been a lot of research in that space, and none of it has been conclusive to say that higher pH water is actually better for you. There has been some indications that it goes through your digestive system slightly faster than tap water. So you can argue that it does help hydrate you, but
Okay.
is it significant enough to pay the premium of an alkaline water? I'm not sure. That's again, really up to you to decide whether it's make a difference for your body or not. I'm very skeptical of that because think about it this way,
Yeah.
right? Your stomach is very acidic. That's how you break down
Yes.
food,
Yeah.
and your stomach is usually what 1.5 to I think two
Very
and a half
acidic. Yeah.
pH. So as soon as you drink a bottle of alkaline water, that is this pH is gonna
Yeah. You would
gone.
close to neutralize it anyway.
Yeah, you're gonna be neutralizing it in your stomach anyway because that's a pond of acid essentially. So to me, it doesn't sound like it would do much. And even if you drink like 5, 6 bottles of alkaline water a day,
Yeah.
that will only work temporarily to change your body pH. Actually, it's kind of dangerous to change the pH of your body, and I don't think you will even
Yeah.
succeed even if you try. Your body works very hard. Your kidneys would kick in if your pH moves away from like 7.3. It's a very tight margin that your body maintains its pH at, and it doesn't
Yeah.
allow it to change. So that's kind of the scam that is around
Huh.
alkaline water
Interesting.
because even if you drink it, your body is going to neutralize it right away anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. So alkaline water, how did they alkaline it? Like what are they doing from a manufacturing steps? What are they doing to the water?
So that's a very good question. So after we already talked about distillation and purification, after you've had that done to your water, it then would go into a separate process. It's called ionization. What essentially you're doing, you're running electricity through your water, and that would change the molecular structure of your water. And you would end up with positive ions and negative ions water. Then that same water would go through electrically charged platinum plates. So you'd have plates that are charged with positive charge, others charged with negative charge. And that difference will attract the positive ions and the negative ion water in different directions. So as they separate, they take this positive ion water and that makes it alkaline water. You can then control the pH of that water to make it more alkaline, less alkaline by controlling the current that you're charging those plates, those platinum plates with. So the higher the charge, the more alkaline your water will be because you're just attracting more of it in one direction. And that's essentially how you end up with alkaline water.
Interesting. So I noticed that there are some regulatory, um, I guess, stipulations on f- uh, two water companies that thou shall do this, this, this. They have to add minerals to water, and if so, what are those minerals they have to add and why?
So there's no requirement for what minerals you need to add and how much of them. So another thing to point out here is mineral water. So I don't know if you've noticed there are some bottled waters that says mineral
Yeah.
water. So there is regulation about around mineral water, which essentially should be water that has at least 250 ppm, so parts per million,
Hmm.
in minerals. So that's total minerals coming from a natural source only. So you're not adding that to calling it mineral
So
water.
that's not specific. It's just general minerals, like minerals in general. Total should be at least
Total,
250 ppm. Okay,
total
total. Okay,
minerals in
and if
that
it's
water, and
if it doesn't hit that threshold, you cannot call your water mineral water.
you
Is
got it.
that fair? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So now that you have, I guess, quote unquote, your final water or your
Yeah.
final water solution, um, I know there's different variations of packaging, but let's talk about like almost the typical plastic bottle with the cap. Does that come like pre-formed and all they have to do is fill it with water and then seal it, or is it something else?
So that depends heavily on the factory, right? So a lot of the companies would have it. You would see the plastic bottle come in exactly as you see it on the shelf, and they would just fill it, cap it, ship it.
Okay.
A lot of other companies, they have what they call like a vertical integration. So they would take the plastic and they would either, there are different ways of doing that as well, but the most common one is they take what they call preforms. So a preform, think of it as this tube. You have the neck of the bottle exactly as you see it on the shelf, but it's not blown into the size that you're familiar with. That would then go through a machine that would blow that into the shape that you see it. So they take those plastic tubes and then they would put them in a mold and then inject hot air inside. And that makes it expand into the shape of the mold that it is in, giving it the
Okay.
shape of the bottle that you're familiar with.
So water seems to be, I guess, simple, and the process itself is already tailored towards, safe for consumption. So what do they do afterwards? Like, is there any quality checks that the factories do? What are they doing after for food safety?
So the most important thing when it comes to bottled water is to make sure that it's actually pure. So collecting samples before they add, so after it goes through this distillation, and distillation is very safe and reliable, but if you're using something that is different, like going through ceramic filters, carbon filters, or the reverse osmosis, you would not collect a sample there every once in a while to make sure that this system is operating at standard and it's not like let's say your membranes with the reverse osmosis system are punctured and it's pushing
Hmm.
water through without actually purifying it. You want to be
Right.
able to catch that. So they do some testing as well in terms of like a per shift regular production where they check the cap, make sure it's capped properly, they make sure that the torque on the cap is done properly. And for the most part, it's very simple. It's a lot less stringent than what you would see in other processes because you're not doing a lot of manual work. All the distillation and purification is highly, highly automated and it's very reliable technology.
Okay. I'm assuming they also do microbial tests.
So after they add the water with all the minerals in the batch tank and before they release it into the production line, they would collect a sample and they would use that to check for the concentration of all the minerals to make sure that's up to the standard that they're looking for, whether that's magnesium, chlorine, phosphate, whatever that might be. And they
Right.
would also take a sample for microbial growth. Now, microbial growth takes usually a couple of days to detect. So you can't just take the sample, test it, and get a result right away. Because again,
Yeah.
you're taking water, you're putting it in a petri dish, creating a perfect environment for the bacteria to grow to see if it will grow. And that process can take 2 to 3 days. So they would, once it meets the other specs we talked about for minerals, they would do a conditional release to proceed with production. And if that petri dish sample comes back positive, they would then recall it from their warehouses for the entire batch. That recall usually is happening within a couple of days. So as a consumer, you wouldn't see it. It's happening in the supply chain before it gets to the
Yeah.
store.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I'm gonna have my tap water.
This episode is making you thirsty, eh?
Ah, that's my good old fashioned municipality
Tap
water
water,
right there.
unfiltered, unfiltered. Kidneys are shot.
I guess there you have it. That's water in a bottle, and
That's
that's
water.
what's in theory making smart water so special. And so, Tarek, thanks for bringing us through the water bottle journey and the geniuses in the UK that started it all. Now we have giants like Nestle in the game, Coca Cola, and I guess everybody's in the game. Water is a very great commodity business. I
It's a big
learned
business,
about
surprisingly.
yeah, I learned about reverse osmosis, which has nothing to do with normal osmosis. And then the potential scam of alkaline water, which I guess research still has to be done, whether it's just a scam or there's some kind of positive effect on it. And then how mineral water needs to have at least 250 ppm dissolved minerals altogether to be considered and be labeled mineral water, which is almost like what is considered colostrum or what is considered 1% actual milk,
You got
like
it.
in our milk episode.
Yeah,
So
but it has to be natural. That's key. Naturally
natural's key.
above 250. It cannot be added because you can easily add that stuff, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
true. All right. And that's the end of this episode. So thank you so much for listening. Like, subscribe, follow on all our socials. Leave us a suggestion on what you want to hear about next. And then also leave a suggestion on what kind of format you guys like. What do you enjoy? And with that being said, my name is Amar.
My name is Tarek. Have a good night.